Hey guys, this is John. I'm playing HSK in the 15-minute pool on ICC. This is a FIDE Master, 2162 in the pool. I've played this player before, I believe. I'm just thinking about how I want to open with them. Let's play D4. I'm just going to check their stats real quick before I make my next move. Yeah, 5-minute rating of 2307. They haven't played a whole lot of 15-minute, but peak rating in this pool of 2341. Okay, I'm going to go with the main line, D4, C4. And we'll see what we get. If he's going to go for a Grunfeld or a King's Indian. Looks like a King's Indian today. Let's play a Samisch. We'll go F3. And then Knight GE2. This is one of my favored lines. If you follow my channel, you've seen me play this frequently, especially in 15-minute. Knight C6 is one of the main responses for black. I'll just play Bishop E3. Now, typically black plays A6, Rook B8, and then goes for B5. I don't know if the immediate Rook B8 runs into D5 or not. Probably not, because if D5, let's say Knight E5, they would be hitting C4. So even though I can play Bishop takes A7 with tempo, Rook A8 will force my bishop to move, and then Knight takes C4 is coming. Still, their treatment of this position looks provocative to me. I don't ever recall seeing Rook B8 instead of A6. So that's why I'm just thinking for a moment. So again, if D5, Knight E5, I could play my knight somewhere to defend the pawn. Something like Knight G3. That would lead to a little more unusual waters. Maybe Rook B8 could be superfluous then. Kind of weird, but I think I'm going to go for D5. The game could take an original path now. Queen D2 would have been the normal move. Yeah, so now I'm going to move this knight. Probably Knight G3. I could also play Knight C1, but I think Knight G3 is a little more promising. So let's just defend this guy. Now we're threatening Bishop takes A7. And I believe black will address that either by playing A6 or maybe C5. But my plan is just to play Bishop E2, castle, at some stage play F4, probably. All right, so A6 was played. Bishop E2 is probably what I'll do. B5 is not yet a threat. I could also play H3 and try to rush F4. But I think I feel better about just playing Bishop E2, so let's do that. And he goes C5. So now I might want to play A4 just to shut down the prospect of B5 altogether. I could also just castle. I mean, B5 is a gambit. Maybe I shouldn't even be concerned about that. But say I castle and black plays B5 and I take, he takes. I guess knight takes B5 is pretty simple there, isn't it? Yeah, actually, let's not react to what he's doing quite yet. I didn't want to take en passant. I want to keep this pawn in the center. So that wasn't a consideration. Nice to get a title player in the 15-minute pool. I know many of you have asked me to play higher-rated players in 15-minute. You should know that I don't have any control over the pairings because I just play in the 15-minute pool. So the pairings are just randomized, and whoever the system pairs me with is who I get that particular day. But every once in a while, you'll see stronger players wander into this pool, so it's kind of cool to see. So Queen A5, sometimes black does this to play Queen B4 and try to harass the C4 pawn especially. But I think I can play F4 here, try to kick the knight away before he gangs up on the C4 pawn. So let's say F4 is played, probably he'll go Knight EG4, but then I can just move my bishop away like Bishop D2, and this knight is looking precarious on G4. So let's do that. He's moving quite quickly so far. He's only used a minute for the first 11 moves. All right, let's play Bishop D2 as planned. So I say this knight is precarious because if I were to attack it with H3, his only option would be to go back to H6. H5, so I think if H3, he'll probably still play knight to H6. He might play H4, but I can always play knight H1 if I want. Which looks odd, but isn't unusual in this line at all. for the knight to come to h1 and emerge on f2. He's also leaving his queen opposed to my dark square bishop, so I would look at discoveries, but I don't see a great discovery right now. So I think just h3 is the way to go. I'm also looking briefly at something like f5 right away, just trying to advance in the center, but I would really like this knight out of my business, so let's do this. And he drops back right away. All right, so now I'm looking at pushing one of these pawns, e5 or f5. Both moves are tempting, let me tell you. So if e5, let's say d takes e5, f takes e5, then my bishop is opened up on this knight on h6. I'm worried that my pawn could become vulnerable, but the bishop getting opened up seems like a pretty strong argument for playing this way. f5 also looks pretty good. On f5, he might play h4, though, and my knight would be guarding the pawn on f5, so I'm not sure I want to abandon the defense of that pawn like that. I could play something sneaky, maybe like queen c1, and then f5, trying to gang up on this knight, but he can always play king h7. e5 looks like the most direct way of continuing right now. If I play e5, he does kind of get the use of the f5 square, though. Still, it's very enticing to get this advance in with tempo. It frees up the e4 square. Looks like the type of move where good things will happen to your position. e5, he might ignore it and play knight h7, after which my pawn is under attack. So let's say e5, knight h7, and then what? Maybe for that reason, queen c1 should be played so that I can try to improve my application of the e5 advance. So if I can entice him to play king h7, then e5 might come with a little more force. So I'm just thinking of adjusting the move order. If e5 directly, knight h7, do I gain anything by playing something like e6? Doesn't really look like it. He can close the position up with something like f5. So e5, knight h7, let's say knight ce4, queen back to c7. Nothing looks crushing there. I could also play e5 and try to sack on h5, but I'm not convinced by that either. For one thing, he doesn't have to take. So if I start with queen c1, let's say he plays king h7, and then I play e5. Knight g8. Maybe, just maybe. All right, I'm going to play this way because I'm using a lot of time, and it looks all right. I mean, the queen is x-raying this knight, and the f-pawn advancing has to be on black's radar now. So it looks okay. And I'd like to avoid getting down to like 5 minutes very quickly here in a complicated position. Maybe I even had some other way of playing it, like bishop d3, something subtle. An improving move. Black doesn't have a lot of threats at the moment, so it's mainly boiling down to what I want to do with my center and king side. I'm probably not going to play much on the queen side. Black's already committed some pieces over there, like their queen. Their queen is going to want to move pretty soon, almost certainly. This move might be too sneaky for its own good. I mean, technically, I'm not threatening much, although I did think he would play this move. So now, do we continue with e5? That was my plan. And I should probably see it through. Yeah, let's do this. Full speed ahead. So now I get e4, and I really like the fact that after knight e4, with tempo on the queen, knight g5 may be available. So let's see how black responds. I think knight g8 is the most solid move, even though it looks incredibly cramped for black on the king side. This move I don't know about, because knight e4, Queen c7, maybe e6 thereafter. Probably starting with knight e4 looks good. Knight b5, he can play queen b6, so I don't like that as much. Yeah, let's begin with this move. See where that black queen goes. Probably it's going to go to c7, maybe b6, but I predict c7. And then I'll have a nice choice on the next move of moves like knight g5 or taking on d6 or even e6. e6 certainly springs to mind because if he takes it, I get knight g5 check and then knight takes e6. But he'll play his knight to f6 again, most likely. Although that looks really strong for me after something like f5 or taking and then f5. Yeah, that just looks tremendous. So e6. Just want to make sure before I play it. He can play bishop d4 check, but I think king h2 should be fine. There's also knight g5 immediately, but maybe I want to hold off on that for now. Yeah, let's go e6 directly. I think he's either going to play knight f6 or he's going to play bishop d4 check first. Black has that option. Notice how this e-pawn kind of splits the board in half. It's the effect it has. I'm trying to isolate these pieces over on the queen side. Okay, so here I was thinking of just taking. I know knight g5 check looks very obvious and tempting. I mean, I could play knight g5 check and after like king g8, maybe just bishop d3. That looks pretty darn strong, but so does taking and then pushing f5. And this has trouble written all over it for black. So if I take, probably he'll take with a bishop. And then f5 hits the knight, though. I gotta believe they're just going to get killed in that ensuing position. So if take, he's actually probably going to take with a pawn. And then f5, let's say h4. Yeah, that's really, really ugly for him, but maybe not lost. Could also play f5 straight away. So many good moves. Yeah, maybe f5 straight away. He still has h4. Knight takes f6, pawn takes f6. All right, you know what? I'm gonna do this and then play bishop d3. I changed my mind. I know I burned some time there, but this plan of playing bishop d3 on the next move looks really good. And hitting the g6 point. So now I'm threatening to take on f7 and then take g6. That seemed more clear to me than the knight takes f6 and f5 plan, although I suspect that was good too. But since this looks straightforward, I'm going to go for it in the interest of time. Yeah, h4. Sensible. Probably knight e2. Couldn't send the knight through h1. Actually, knight here is okay as well, but I think it's better to do this and not allow him to trade pieces so easily. Because if knight e4, he could take and then push f5. I don't want him to close down the king side. That for sure would not be good. So is he going to go to f5 next? I could take g6, but then he's going to take d5. And it gets a little messy. So let's just take back. Now knight f5 is probably coming. And maybe I'll play queen c2. Can move this knight away. He's still kind of stuck, but maybe he has a chance to defend. I don't know. I didn't see this knight f5 idea. Yeah, he found it. Probably forced, but I wish I had foreseen that. Now he's got to move this knight. Maybe knight h5. Otherwise, I'm taking on f5 next. I think if he moves the knight, probably bishop c3 should be played to try to trade those bishops. He's getting some squares. Bishop c3, there's knight e3, though. So maybe I should start with rook ae1. It's getting more complicated, though. And he can play, like, b5 and kind of go from there. Yeah, knight h5. Let's bring this over. I got to play quicker now, obviously, with my 4 minutes. I mean, I definitely think my position is still good, but this didn't lead to any material gain, and for the moment, my kingside play is stalled. So I'm kind of shifting more towards center play. I don't see how I'm going to evict this knight so easily. Now I'm going to try for knight c3 to d5. Something like that. Yep, and here comes the counterattack. So probably knight c3. Just directly. b3 could be played, but I don't think it's as good. So let's do this. I'm worried about bishop d4, because then I'd have to play king h2. He's got a foothold on g3 that's pretty nice. I wouldn't be opposed to sacrificing the exchange if it came to that. So if he takes c4, I'll probably take back with my bishop. Maybe I could play bishop takes f5, but that looks speculative. Yeah, I'm not going to think about that for too long. Let's just do this. He can put his bishop on b7 so that he can always eliminate a piece that comes to d5. That's what I would do if I were him, probably, because I think his bishop is pretty useless. I mean, it doesn't have anything to do attacking e6, so he might as well assign it to this diagonal. I might want to play like a prophylactic move like king h2. I should bear in mind that he might go for d5 soon, however. So maybe b3 is a better use of my tempo right now. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Just so in the event of knight d5 and we get a trade, he won't be attacking b2. So this move kind of stabilizes things. Three and a half minutes, though, to his 8.5. For black, achieving d5 would be the best thing he could hope for in this position. Like, that would be really nice if he was able to do it. This move might win the exchange. Because if rook f2, he has bishop d4. So yeah, it's looking like I'm going to have to give the exchange. But we'll see. We'll see if we can make this work. I'm going to get some compensation. And that dark square bishop is a useful defender of the king. So now knight d5, probably. Position's going to open up, and maybe not in my favor, though. I could play for something like knight f7, but that also doesn't look great. All right, I'm going to try this. I don't have a good feeling about it, though. I'm wondering if after he takes the exchange, he can take on f2. Or sorry, after he takes on f2, then play something like c4 and try to go after my king. Which is looking a bit lonely in the center. We'll find out. So I'm pre-moving the capture. c4 is a move that definitely concerns me after this. And maybe he can play c4 right now. That's possible as well. Whoa, knight h1. That's a nifty move that I didn't see at all. It's pretty cool looking. I don't know if it's good, but I kind of see his point. So now he's going to take, and I can't play rook f1. So I need to move my rook elsewhere. Like d1? Let's go to d1. He has a check on g3, but that's not going to kill me. I want to get my queen closer to his king. I mean, it'd be nice to do like queen e4, queen f3, queen g4, and then move this knight and attack g6, but always he has knight g3, which is going to slow me down. Okay, let's do this move. Covering g3. This doesn't blunder knight e3 because queen takes g6. So we're just going to do a little rerouting. Maybe even knight f3, take h4 is good. Yeah, he moves his king. I think that's smart. Let's come here. Because now knight e3 might have been a threat, so we might as well address that. I think sticking the knight in on f7 could be good at some stage here. Severing the coordination between rook and knight. Like, say he plays knight g3, I'll probably swap and play knight f7 and then try to go for f5. Maybe even rook takes d4 if it works out. I think he did me a favor with knight h1. I think if he would have just taken on f2, that would have been better. His knights were doing a good job. And also, this c4 idea isn't as powerful anymore. So maybe a turn of events in my favor? We'll see. We do have like a blockade going on this wing, which is nice. Probably queen e4 against this, or queen f3 rather. Trying for knight e4. I'd like to kick this rook back. He's still well ahead on time, but he's also going to be playing blitz pretty soon. Okay, so if I just play... you're going after d5. I didn't see that. Did not see that. Okay, so I might have to exchange on d5. Gets my light square bishop. And now he can propose a trade with queen b7. Not fun. Or he can take that, which I also didn't see. Okay. Let's come here. I know I'm proposing a trade, but I think I kind of need to. Rook f1 was a threat. Okay, let's go knight f7. Threatening to take. Predicting he takes here, so let's pre-move that. The knight does a good job of blocking. So that kills some of his play. I'm threatening h4. Maybe he can go after my e6 pawn, like queen c8, though. Maybe. Because if he can divert my queen from guarding f7, then he can take on f7, and he should be okay. Yeah, queen c8 might be a timely response. I could try bishop d2, followed by bishop h6, but it's not really working. King g8. I hope he doesn't play this move. I could go queen d5, but that also isn't great. Yeah, he found it. It's a good move. I think queen e4 is almost forced here. Nothing else is looking great. And now he can sack the exchange back. I do win h4 after that, but he's out of the woods. He's actually up a pawn, I believe, if he does that. And I have 1 minute compared to his 4. He's going to play that back right away. Okay. I can't even really take right away because he trades and then he wins e6 at the end. That's really unfortunate. All right, I suppose I got to do this. Threaten bishop h6, but yeah, now he can simply take on f7 and he should win that endgame. I can check and go in a6, maybe. Yep, he's going to take.
Check.
So I'm going to try to win this pawn, although he can actually just move his king away, now that I think about it. Let's go after h4. I just got to play fast now and hope for the best. This is a losing endgame for sure. I'm down time. Try to harass his kingside pawns, but he's very solid. His bishop does a good job of guarding everything. So in other words, I'm not optimistic. He's going to try to invade on f2, but honestly, I don't know that there's much I can do about that. Or actually, queen b1 is the threat, isn't it? Boy, this is ugly. Yeah, I had a great position and just blew it in this game. Turned out my position was overextended. I'm still going to play it out just because, but yeah, this is resignable pretty soon. He's getting c3 in.
Time warning.
Yeah, I can just resign. Okay, so disappointing to lose that one after having built up a really nice position right about here. This is what happens, though, when you're playing shorter time controls and especially without increment, too. It's like sometimes you have to make practical decisions, and I made the wrong practical decision right here, I think. I think my play up till... Actually, maybe even right here. Maybe e6 wasn't the best. There might be some better move. Or maybe I should have taken on f6 right at this stage. Because I was looking at this line, knight takes f6 check, e takes f6, and then f5, but I couldn't hash out what's going on after h4, but maybe just taking on g6 is the way to go there and put my knight on e4. That looks really, really good for white. All right, let's go take a look at it. So this was a King's Indian, Samisch variation. Yeah, and black played knight c6 on move 6. You also see people playing c5 quite frequently. e5 is another move I've encountered a lot, although I think it's inaccurate. So knight c6, I played bishop e3. And now rook b8. I haven't seen that instead of the immediate a6, so that's what encouraged me to play d5. Also, I just wanted to give the game a unique flavor and play something a little bit different. It's entirely possible rook b8 is fine, but I don't see a good reason for playing it prior to a6. So yeah, the main line would be queen d2, a6, and here white has a number of different ninth moves they can choose from, with rook c1 being the main one. But I played d5, black played knight e5, and I put the knight on g3 because I want to guard c4. If I take on a7, he's going to play rook b8, or rook a8 rather, hit the bishop, and then take on c4 next move. And something like queen d4 trying to defend both is too precarious. Yeah, I'm not going to mess up my coordination like this. He can also even just trap the bishop with b6 pretty simply if he wanted to. So knight g3 defending c4, a6, and now I just developed bishop e2, c5, castle. In the long run, I do want to play f4 and kick that knight out, as I was describing. And here I went for that. Because if I wait for a move, I think he's going to play queen b4. Like, say I play something like, I don't know, queen d2. This move could be annoying, attacking the pawn. He also might try for b5 as well. and try to break open the queenside while I've stalled for a moment. So that's why I played f4 directly. Now he played knight g4, and I started feeling great about my position right about here. Yeah, bishop d2, taking aim at that queen on a5, but more importantly, I'm ready to kick this knight out. So he played h5, anticipating that I'm going to play h3. Then he drops back to h6. Yeah, and here I spent a lot of time, probably too much. There were a couple moments where I spent a considerable amount of time, and this was one of them. Queen c1 looks okay. It loads up for potential f5 or e5 moves, and I'm just trying to x-ray that knight on h6 with this move. The engine wants to play bishop d3, just building up. Yeah, a move like bishop d3 is always helpful. I think the bishop is better placed on this diagonal than it is on e2 attacking h5. I thought about e5 directly, but I wasn't too willing to clarify the pawn structure and potentially give his knight h5 this early. Yeah, I think knight h7 was the move that I couldn't figure out how to react to. And I did look at this line, bishop takes h5, because I think if he takes, I get a lot of play, either with knight takes or queen takes. But what concerned me is if bishop takes h5, he doesn't have to take the bishop. Maybe he can take here. Although one nice point is that after takes, he can't take here because the bishop takes h6, and I'm hitting the rook. That is not something I saw. So maybe e5 directly is possible. But on the whole, I don't think queen to c1 is that bad. It still gives white a clear edge after this move. Yep, and now king h7, and this seems to invite e5 now that I have this knight e4 followed by knight g5 check idea. Knight here. And then I did the discovery. Interestingly, the computer wants to play e6 straight away. Or queen b1. It's a funny suggestion. Threatening knight takes h5, I suppose. I don't know why queen b1 instead of queen c2. But mysterious computer stuff. Okay, now it says queen c2. Yeah. Weird looking move. This or this. So what if he just moves his king away? Let's say king g8. Take. f5. Try to open up an attack on h6 and also maybe go pawn f6 or even take on g6. This does look strong for white. So I played knight e4. This move is hard to pass up. And then he went queen c7. Oh, don't you just hate that? When you're reviewing a game and the engine's like, yeah, you're totally winning. And you didn't win the game. So we're in +4 territory now. And I didn't manage to convert. I spent some time here too. Well, not so long. e6 seemed pretty natural. So the engine wants to take and then play f5. And open up the attack here. Once again, f6 could be an idea, or taking here, or still knight g5 check. Yeah, white's threats are reaching critical mass now. So I can understand this evaluation. Let's just see what the computer thinks is best play for both sides. A trade on f5, whereupon the h5 pawn is dead. Yeah, this is gonna be bloody. White's up a pawn with a raging attack. No hope for black. So trading on d6 was a real possibility. I might be biased because I've won a few games where I don't take on d6 and instead advance e6 in this type of structure, so I think that's what encouraged me to do this. Although admittedly, this might give black more counter chances. As you notice, like as these white pawns come forward, they do leave weak squares in their wake. Like now f6 is available to the black knight. So he comes back to that square. And it's still looking great for white, but as you saw in the game, my position can become overextended if I'm not careful.
Check.
Oh, and note that if black takes on e6, then that runs into knight g5 check, followed by knight takes e6 with a fork here. So you can't really contemplate this. This would lead to material loss.
Check.
So check, and then king back to g8. Yeah, and bishop d3, if I could take back a move, that would be the one. I think I had a couple clearer paths. Even if bishop d3 turns out to be good, I think this moment was a key one where I could have improved. Or I should look at the line that I also mentioned, which was knight takes f6, because this also appealed to me. Just trading a defender of the black king. And if bishop takes, I think f5 is going to be killer due to the threats on h6 and also g6 being under attack. This bishop is sitting uselessly on c8, as are the queen and this other rook. They can't participate in the defense. But the line that I wasn't totally happy about was e takes f6. And then f5 looks normal, supporting this pawn and trying to weaken black's kingside. And then h4. I thought h4 would be an annoying counterattack, because if my knight moves away somewhere, let's say to e4, he does get to take on f5. But looking at this now, I wonder why I just didn't strongly consider playing this position, which looks really good. I mean, this protected passed pawn on e6 is a great asset for the future. He can stick his knight on f5, but this is black's only good piece. In fact, I bet even this exchange sack and then something like knight f2 followed by bishop d3 is just going to be killer. Yeah, that's an exchange sack I would make in a heartbeat, because just look at the black pieces. They're all restricted. Not a position that the bishops are going to be having any fun. So something like bishop d3 and swinging the queen over to invade on the light squares if necessary is going to be incredibly difficult for black to defend against. I think he's just losing. So that would have been an easier position to play. Going for the trade and then f5.
Check.
As played, I checked and then played this bishop d3 move, but I didn't see the defense that black came up with. Here also f5 could be played. Okay. And what if h4? Trying to drive away the knight from guarding f5. I can take here. If he takes the knight, I assume that this is going to be crushing in short order. Again, queen b1. It's funny that the engine always says queen b1 instead of queen c2. I don't know why. But now I'd be threatening rook takes f6, followed by queen h7, checkmate. So black would be forced to play this move, which, yeah, I mean, simply this would win. I don't even have to take the knight if I want. I can just keep on loading up on f6, preparing multiple sacrifices, and queen h7. Black is busted. But I played bishop d3, and then he did h4. Knight e2. Could also take on f7, but I think it's pretty similar. Take. And now I took here, allowing knight f5, and I had a real tough time breaking through hereafter. I thought about, after f takes e6, just taking on g6, but this didn't seem clear to me after e takes d5. Yeah, I mean, this evaluation is still one-sided in white's favor, plus over 2.5, let's say, but this plus 2.5 is not the same as that position you saw with the pawns on e6 and f5, and black having like no space and white just dominating the proceedings. This is a position that the computer thinks is still winning for white because it sees through all the tactical complications, but especially with time pressure, I would have preferred that other one, where I was keeping the pawn structure fixed and not allowing black to cause mayhem with the pawns. Because when you have a winning position and time is a factor, you don't want to have to make many tough decisions. And here the position is more fluid, so the chances that I mess up are increasing. So knight f5, and here the engine wants to trade and then play queen e1 and go after h4, which does look good. I didn't see this. Swapping and then simply going after the pawn. Because after I win the pawn, probably knight g3 is coming. Attacking f5, maybe getting into h5, eventually trying to get at h7. That looks good. I try to keep my light square bishop, but I should have been able to, or willing to part with it. Again, bishop takes f5 is the suggestion of the computer. Take, rook takes, bishop c3, try to swap the dark square bishops. My advantage is shrinking, though. I would say with a advantage around +1, but being down 5 or 6 minutes, that's a toss-up. Might even prefer black with that time disadvantage white is feeling. So I played rook AE1, but as I said during the game, here comes the counterattack, B5. I've stalled in the truly fearsome threats on the king side, so now he takes his moment to find counterplay on the queen side. Yeah, and now white's not any better. I was feeling in the game that the tide was turning in favor of my opponent at this point. I played rook AE1 because I wanted to control the E3 square in the event that I move this knight or bishop away. So that was the purpose behind that move, but still it looks slow. Here I played knight C3. Started making some mistakes, but already it's not easy. I think even in a longer game, I would take black at this point because I feel like the momentum is in black's favor. He just made a pawn break. His knights are well placed. H5, F5, blockading. And I think white is going to be somewhat psychologically not demoralized, but weakened because of blowing a great position. Now, I didn't see this idea coming with bishop d4 check. Or was it knight g3 first and then bishop d4, pinning the rook? Bishop b7 is sensible because, as I said, he wants to guard d5, so I can't go knight d5. Note that if I play knight d5 here, he can play c takes d3, and my queen would be under attack, so I'm not going to be able to win his queen outright. So I have to recapture on c4 first. And then bishop b7. I played b3 because if I play knight d5 right away, he takes and then takes on b2 at the end. So I have to play slowly and prophylactically with b3. And then knight hg3, attacking this rook. So I'm just flat out losing an exchange here. I played rook f2. The engine also wants to play rook f3 and give up the exchange that way. Maybe it would be better to get the light square bishop because then at least I can look forward to putting the knight in on d5 when he can't take it with that light square bishop. Still bad for white, but that was a move I could have considered. And I think for all intents and purposes, black should be winning after this, although it's still a little unclear. I charged ahead with knight d5. This is one of these moves that you play. Like, I knew it was probably bad even when I played it, but I just had to choose something. The engine wants to go backward, knight d1. Tough move to play, psychologically. I think most people are going to go forward in this position. But the reason why I said that I thought this move was bad is because I was really worried about this c4 idea, trying to open up like the queen combining with the bishop against the rook on f2. So say I take it, I don't know, queen takes c4. Yeah, queen b6 or queen a7, and already I can't defend f2. If the rook comes here, he can take it. Or to e2, he can take it. If I take with a pawn, rook b2 is coming. This is just bad news if he gets c4 in. So that was a missed opportunity for black. This knight h1 move was fancy looking, but I think it's questionable. Yeah, that does drop black's advantage by quite a bit. So I take, he takes on f2. Rook d1. Remember, I can't... Well, actually, I could go to e2, I suppose. But if I go to f1, he gets to check. Then I have to play king h2, and then he takes here with check, and it's like a pendulum. He can come back here and guard against queen takes g6, winning the rook and winning the game. But I guess for that reason, I actually could play rook e2 if I wanted. Because if knight g3, king h2, he doesn't have time to take here because it's not with check. So you would actually lose the game after queen takes g6. I'm mating him next move. But rook d1 is still preferred by the computer. Now I was just scrambling for any sort of counterplay with my 2 minutes and change remaining. He played well from here. I think he found some nice defensive resources. I didn't see any major opportunities that I missed. Maybe I should stick the knight on f7 straight away. Probably I should before he gets a chance to play rook f6, because rook f6 contributes to his defense, and it attacks e6 and better secures that knight on f5. with knight f7 directly, I could sever the tie between the rook and the knight, and maybe I could generate something on the king side. Maybe do this plan of bishop e1, queen e4, queen f3, queen g3, something along those lines. As played, however, just looked like he had everything under control. Yeah, here I missed that knight e3 was going to fork the queen and the bishop. Or not the queen and the bishop, the rook and the bishop. He took f4. I played rook f3 because rook f1 was a threat. I tried knight f7, but it's too little too late. This move blocks the rook, but he found the nice response, queen c8, threatening to take on e6, and now I'm just grasping at straws, trying for something. He's threatening to take the pawn, and I'm coming up short. If I tried bishop d2, looking for bishop h6, he would just allow that to happen.
Check.
Because if bishop takes f8 at the end, yeah, I guess I'm getting
Check.
mated queen e1.
Checkmate.
That's a tidy little checkmate. But even if he had to play queen takes f7, he would be totally winning here. In this bishop endgame, up 2 pawns. So I played queen e4, guarding e6. He could sack on f7 right away, but I like the way he played it even better. Just pulled the bishop back to f6. He knows that he can sack whenever he wants, and he just defends h4. I can't take h4, because if I do, he happily trades and again takes on e6. And usually a queen and a knight are a good attacking unit, but here it's not going to work. If queen h6, he can just take my knight. And he's up way too much material. It's funny that the engine thinks that this is the best move here.
Check. Check.
Getting in a fancy trade, but once again, white is down too much. So bishop d2 was played. He took on f7. And now I'm down 2 pawns.
Check.
And I didn't manage to win a6 either. He just sidestepped with his king. I was hoping for queen e6, queen takes a6, which also should be winning for black, but at least with my past a pawn, I can hope. But he kept everything under wraps, and soon it was game over for me. And this was a nice invasion. Queen d3, attacking my pawn on b3. And then c4, not fearing a passed pawn, because his passed pawn is stronger, and after c3 and the bishop moves, he's going to play queen takes b5. Among other moves, queen takes b5 would be safe, but... Okay, so a good comeback by HSK. I think the critical moments in this game were right around here when knight h6 was played. I think my decision-making was all right leading up to this, but I was feeling the pressure of the clock, and as a result, I made a questionable decision, especially with passing up knight takes f6 right here. That was my first instinct, and I think I should have just stuck to it. I even saw that line, knight takes f6, e takes f6, f5, h4, f takes g6, f takes g6, and I thought I could do better than that. So I went with knight g5, bishop d3, but he did a good job of defending and confusing the issue thereafter. So I'm not going to harp too much on my time management. It could be better in some of these 15-minute games, but playing and commenting is always a challenge. And without increment, you're going to get in situations like this. It's kind of inevitable. On the whole, though, I played the opening well, and I think I found some good moves to punish his setup. Black was playing speculatively out of the opening, but the execution of the advantage could have been better. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be back again tomorrow with another one. Talk to you guys later. Bye.